Heed my request. It'll only take a moment of your time. For what I ask plain. If you're a bard, for your own sake, do not sing, for your voice cannot compare to mine. Undoubtedly, these snot-bearing rags have collected their fair share of slime, but I've received no complaints from the company I've sought. You're wrong. I wasn't always a handsome bard. I used to be a handsome adventurer, and before that I was just handsome. Unfortunately, my adventuring days came to an end after I nearly lost my life in a scuffle with a group of bandits known as the Silver Hand. After that, I figured it wasn't worth it. Sure, I was a damn good fighter. The best. But I was damn near good at everything else too. I owed it to this world to keep me alive. I can't even begin to imagine what sort of Daedric nightmare Skyrim would be if I didn't exist. It happened in an inn, not unlike this one, where I met this lovely tavern wench, a bit chubby, but on the voluptuous side of fat. I could have charmed and cajoled her, but I've always been the type to show rather than tell. So I showed her just exactly how her previous lovers had failed her. Unfortunately, my favorite thrusts were such that she accused me of turning into a beast during the height of my passion. Literally. To be specific, she said I was a werewolf. When rumors spread around of my transformation, I became a target of the Silver Hand. That wench made the coffin maker a lot of money that day, with all the men I was now forced to kill. I'm beginning to think the two were kin. Your words can mock me, but your cowardly face serves as its own retort. Of course, you can try to change it, but it will do no good. You can narrow your eyes and bare your teeth, but you forget I am a bard, and I can hear the subtle trill in your voice. It tells me you are afraid, but considering how magnificent I am, you have every reason to be. You remind me of that poor Breton imp. He's an old acquaintance of mine. Joined up with wolf hunters just so he could have a chance to kill me. As if I could be killed. In fact, the little carrot licker's been trying to kill me for more than a dozen years now, back when my balls had more fur than his chin. We fought with swords, bare knuckles, knives, bows, and scrolls. We fought in the snow, in caves, in taverns, and on horseback. We fought alone, with companions, on opposite sides of the war. The one place he doesn't like to fight is out in the sun. I think it's because he's a bloody vampire. Now that I'm a bard, he'll likely become a writer so he can document his lies in books while I immortalize the truth in song. I remember bits and pieces, a few stories here and there, but I can hardly keep a ledger. If you want the details, you will have to ask him. I can't be expected to recall events that are so unworthy of my memories. If you're that interested in my exploits, I'm sure I can drudge up a few details. Let's see. I believe it was a stormy night in Whiterun, and travelers from across the hold crammed themselves into the Bannered Mare. I remember being confronted by a child dressed from head to toe in steel. Only upon removing his helmet he revealed himself as the Breton. In the interest of sport, I offered to allow him to duel me on horseback, while I fought blindfolded. It was the only way to even the odds. We settled on mounted combat, which I accepted knowing that he had already bribed Skulvar into giving him the superior horse. The rain continued to pour that night, our horses trundling through the mud. It was his opinion that the vast tundra would make for a fine arena. I could barely see through the blades of water that whipped into our eyes as he positioned his steed 100 horse lengths from mine. We were to charge at the sound of his companion's horn, and when it blared, I flew. I flew through the storm like a mighty chariot, hassles of water fling about in my wake. I felt the elements swirling around me, focusing their energy into my axe. I knew then the Breton would die that day. Only the little imp was nowhere to be found. I assumed he had fled. That would have been the sensible thing. When I found him lying in the mud, his horse having slipped and broken both their legs, he blamed me, of course, for sabotaging his horse. What does he think? I used some sort of mind control on the beast? I wouldn't put it past me, but it's not a power I possess. I am inclined to believe it was his companion that brought him a lame horse, in order to salvage the little imp's life. Yes, perhaps I do recall some of it. It was in Riften, I think, at the turn of the century, on the eve of the New Life Festival. We were all in a drunken revelry when these two elves got into an argument because one of them refused to dance with the other's sister. Then the one elf says to the other, "If your sister looks anything like you, I'd rather bet an orc." Then an orc woman rises from her chair and yells some sort of curse before smashing a flagon across his nose. Pretty soon the whole place is an all-out brawl. That's when I felt a tap on the shoulder. My instincts were to turn and duck. Too bad the Breton was aiming for my neck. The little imp ended up shaving my scalp. "How much did you pay those elves to start this?" I asked him. He said he didn't have to pay them anything. When he told them the plan was to kill me, he said they offered to do it for free. An obvious lie, of course. You're right, but only because they happened at the end of the wars we were fighting. We were there when the Jarl of Markarth surrendered to Madanach, and when Madanach surrendered to Ulfric. We were supposed to be witnesses to the peace accord, but ended up fighting in the Hall of the Dead while the others were in the keep. It was he who initiated both duels. I would never do something so undignified given the circumstances. As the clasp of swords tend to echo in those spacious dwarven ruins, we were limited to bows. Of course, I was working with a handicap. After nearly escaping the first duel, the second time the Breton swine came prepared with poison-tipped arrows and 3 red potions tied to his belt. So in effect, to succeed, I would have to kill him 4 times. I only managed 3 before I ran out of arrows. Indeed. Again, you're better off asking him. If we both stay at this inn long enough, you might be unlucky enough to meet him. How should I know? He told it to me once. Shouted it at me, really. But I couldn't be bothered to remember such an insignificant detail. You'll likely find him wherever it is filthy skeevers like to congregate. My name will most assuredly be the first word out of his mouth. Some think it was a voice born to tell stories, or one meant to lead men into battle. Others contend my very throat was forged by dragonfire. I've heard some describe it like a bottle of hard whiskey and boiled potatoes, like smoke misting off hot coals. Most tell me it's a voice that carries with it a sense of authority, a voice fit for a king. I do nothing to dissuade such accusations. Now imagine this regal, manly voice of mine singing all the bard's favorites. My patrons from here to Riften will come to this inn to hear it. Yet despite me doubling her business, Vaida insists on charging me for a room. Such greed is unbecoming. You'll have to ask him. I haven't the faintest idea. Probably fell in love with me or something, seeing as I have that effect on women and men. All I know is, wherever I go, he manages to show up. The humblest of births, but someday, the most glorious of ends. That is, if someone like myself is even capable of dying. I'm not entirely sure. Yet I am indeed a far cry from the life my mother sought to raise me in when she was but a handmaiden working in Dragon's Reach. In my childhood, I grew up around nobles, thanes, and highborn lords, sworn to the servant's oath to perform one's duty and to go unnoticed. Indeed, only I can think of nothing more dreadful than going unnoticed. You see, I've always longed for attention, yearned for it, craved it. And there is no purer attention, no higher appraisal of one's worth than the giving of applause. That's what I play for. The last pluck of a lute string and the faint echo of silence before the crowd roars in appreciation. I play for both the silence and the roar, the anticipation and the climax, the moments that seem to go on forever, and yet are never long enough. Of course you would. Tell me, with what song shall I escort you to the heavens? Very well. That's an old legend, and a song the locals never get tired of.
Our hero claims a warrior's heart. I tell you, the dragonborn comes with a voice wielding power of the ancient, no doubt. Believe, the dragonborn comes. It's an end to the evil of all Skyrim's foes. Beware, the dragonborn comes. But the darkness has passed and the legend yet grows. You know, the dragonborn comes.
Yeah. You're the boss, but only because I allow it.